Television has been an institution in homes for decades, and despite how smoothly and coordinated it appears to viewers like us, there have been several moments across the world where television was hijacked, sometimes by technical whizzes, sometimes by pranksters, hell, sometimes even by foreign governments. Today, I wanted to take you through 4 of the most interesting and most alarming broadcast interruptions in television history. The first of these takes us to the United States. The year is 1986, and the home box office, or HBO, has just made a huge decision. In January of that year, HBO decided to scramble its signal full-time. Now what exactly does that mean? Well, prior to this, to gain access to HBO, in theory, you paid for a subscription, and through the means of cable, you'd be able to watch the channel's programming. However, there were numerous ways people could get around this. Those who own certain kinds of satellite dishes, as well as several businesses who could place satellite antennas on their roofs, could freely receive the channel, rather than pay for the cable. By scrambling the signal, viewers who wanted to tune into HBO via satellite instead of cable would need a special decoder box, a machine that when installed properly would enable the viewer to watch the channel's programming smoothly. If you were a satellite user, to try and watch HBO without one of these decoder boxes, your picture would look something like this.
If you own a home satellite dish, you may recognize this picture. It's scrambled. 12 hours a day we scramble the HBO satellite signal, so our programming looks like this, unless it's decoded. On January 15th, 1986, we'll start scrambling 24 hours a day, but your home satellite dish can keep receiving HBO. To find out how, call this number during business hours, 9 to 5 Eastern Time.
However, I would argue that this was a very risky decision for HBO. Whilst it gave them more reassurance that satellite viewers would essentially be blocked from accessing the channel for free, it would in turn dramatically sour the relationship that HBO had with this specific user base. One of the main factors being the cost. Satellite users would have to invest in the Video Cipher 2 decoder box to unscramble the signal. The cost of one of these boxes in 1986 ran to nearly $400. And if that wasn't enough, even after purchasing the decoder box, satellite users would have to pay $12.95 a month, which was either the same or in some cases more expensive than it was for cable users. This caused outrage among the satellite community, and for many independent businesses, they saw their sales dry up dramatically. And one such business was McDougal Electronics. Its founder and owner, John R. McDougal, had decided enough was enough. John R. McDougal had been operating his satellite business since 1983, where initially turnover and revenue had been healthy. After HBO's full-time scrambling came into effect in early 1986, however, McDougal noticed a sharp decrease in both foot traffic to his store and, more importantly, a downturn in overall sales. As the months went by, he had to take drastic action. Advertisements for his company were pulled, and he even turned off air conditioning in a bid to cut costs. Eventually, he took up a part-time job to help him get by, this being as an operations engineer for the Central Florida Teleport Uplink station. As such, on April 20th, 1986, at around 10 to 1 in the morning, McDougal decided to superimpose the standard coloured bars test pattern over HBO's signal, for a brief period of time. However, with the coloured bars being such a standard feature in television at the time, and being so late at night with few viewers, HBO decided not to investigate the strange occurrence. But little did they know that this was just the beginning. April 26th, 1986. McDougal oversees the uplink of a movie for the People's Choice channel whilst working at the station. As the movie concluded, McDougal began to close everything down as normal. However, before fully signing off, he decided to pull up the coloured bars once again, but this time use a character generator to type out a simple message. Once this message was complete, McDougal aimed the station's dish at the satellite responsible for HBO's feed, which was known as Galaxy 1. And so, within the first hour of April 27th, at 12:32 AM EST, viewers of that night's film, The Falcon and the Snowman, were treated to this now infamous broadcast interruption. This was the message from Captain Midnight. McDougal's signal could have been seen across the entire eastern half of the United States, which at that time accounted for roughly half of HBO's 14.6 million subscriber base. For 4.5 minutes, those tuning in were greeted with the captain's message. Now, if you've been keeping an open ear, you'll probably be able to decipher what this message is all about, namely the $12.95 no way, reflecting McDougal's and to a wide extent the whole satellite community's frustrations that HBO had bestowed upon them with the full-time scrambling and the extra fees they would now have to pay. The final line, which warns the Showtime and Movie Channel to beware, has often been misinterpreted. Some people, especially at the time, took it as some sort of direct threat, that this mysterious captain was going to somehow go after these channels, that he had successfully hacked into their rival, HBO, and that they were next. However, it has been clarified that this was not the case. McDougal merely warned them that should the new pricing system for HBO not work out with their satellite consumer base, then these rival channels could meet a similarly disastrous future. For 90 seconds or so, there was a power battle between McDougal and engineers at HBO, with both upping their power outage to try and obtain the strongest signal. HBO eventually relented due to fearing potential damage to their satellite dish and increasing the power to too high a level. So Captain Midnight won the airwaves, and after a few minutes eventually powered down his dish for the same reason. Instantly feeling scared and guilty for what he had done, McDougal, somewhat optimistically, hoped no one at HBO would have taken much notice. Unfortunately for him, he was quite wrong.
The Criminal Division is looking into a weekend incident in which someone suddenly interrupted a home box office movie on cable.
An objection to the price HBO is charging dish owners for access to its recently scrambled programs. Someone with access to a large satellite transmission dish, probably in or near the contiguous United States, but untraceable in so large an area, had simply aimed at the appropriate satellite and, using HBO's published frequency, transmitted with more power than HBO, which overrode and replaced the HBO signal. They say this is a relatively minor case of a new type of electronic jamming which could threaten several sectors of our society. The Federal Communications Commission is worried.
We take it very seriously. We would prosecute with whatever resources we have.
As April 27th continued onwards into the morning, network television started reporting on the incident, confirming the reality for McDougal that his actions had indeed been noticed. After a few months and lengthy investigations, the FCC caught up with Captain Midnight himself, and on July 22nd, McDougal pleaded guilty to illegally operating a satellite uplink transmitter. By doing this, his sentence was as follows: 1 year of probation, a $5,000 fine, and his amateur radio license was to be suspended for 1 year. Thankfully for McDougal, with the satellite dish industry rebounding in the 1990s, he was able to keep his store open, and you can even still visit the store's website, although it looks like it hasn't been touched since the late 90s. Still, a nice little oddity to check out. However, despite being a somewhat polite intrusion, the broadcast hijacking from Captain Midnight would have had monumental impact across the television industry. Because of his actions, the Electronic Communications Privacy Act of 1986 was passed, which officially made any kind of satellite hijacking a felony. Also, many channels would increase the power of their satellites in order to make it more difficult for people to intrude. This didn't make them impervious to such a hijack, however, and just 1 year later, arguably the most infamous TV hijack was to take place. But more on that a little bit later. Let's fast forward all the way up until 2013. Television in the US, and in many patterns of the world, has fully entered and transitioned to the digital age, with analog TV becoming a thing of the past. However, remnants from that era did carry over, one such remnant being the emergency alert system.
No.
Originally launched as the Emergency Broadcast System in 1963, the EBS, later EAS, was a system designed to warn viewers of a multitude of impending catastrophes. The key one of the first few decades of its life being the threat of a nuclear war. So if an attack was imminent, the EBS would broadcast across all TV and radio stations to alert viewers. As the Cold War ended in the late 1980s, the EAS stuck around through the 90s and into the new millennium, although now more commonly used to warn viewers of natural disasters, such as impending hurricanes, for example. The EAS is known for its distinctive introduction, which is now branded into the brains of millions of Americans as the sound that demands attention. However, on February 11, 2013, when the EAS was triggered, instead of warning of volatile weather or some kind of nuclear attack, viewers in Great Falls, Montana, watching KRTV, heard this announcement.
Because he's the only one there
Alright,
for
so
me.
you win if I tell you that I will change first, right? But if I show you, don't even talk to me, dude. But if I show you, I mean, it might take a month or two, a couple months, you know? But if I show you.
Civil authorities in your area have reported that the bodies of the dead are rising from their graves and attacking the living. Follow the messages on screen that will be updated as information becomes available. Do not attempt to approach or apprehend these bodies as they are considered extremely dangerous.
That's right, folks. Zombies are finally coming to destroy us all. Obviously this was some kind of prank, but the serious tone of the announcer, coupled with using the EAS, a system that automatically gets people a bit tense, contributed to several viewers becoming frightened that this unnatural event was actually taking place. Similar interruptions happened later the same day in areas of Michigan and Wisconsin, and sometime later a similar incident occurred in Port Ellis, New Mexico. However, with this fourth interruption, it eventually led to the arrest of the individual responsible for the hacking. The hijacking is notable purely for the subject matter of the so-called emergency. The fact that someone was able to get into the system and be able to broadcast to viewers that zombies were literally rising from their graves, I mean, it's honestly quite remarkable. But it also proves that despite the full move to digital and the heightened security around these kinds of things, broadcast hijacking could still occur, if an individual had the means and know-how to be able to slip through the cracks. Let's have a listen to this sensationalist hoax one more time.
Civil authorities in your area have reported that the bodies of the dead are rising from their graves and attacking the living. Follow the messages on screen that will be updated as information becomes available. Do not attempt to approach or apprehend these bodies as they are considered extremely...
If the idea of zombies rising from their graves and attacking the living is frightening enough for you, well, how about the idea of aliens hijacking your TV and warning you that we must abandon our ways of evil in order to pass into the new age? Well, back in late 1977, this did indeed happen. In rural southern England, anyway. It's the night of the 26th of November, 1977, and if you lived in the south or southeast of England, you may have been tuning into ITV, specifically its franchise holder for the area, Southern Television.
You're watching Southern Television. Hello, good morning, and welcome to your Saturday programmes.
Around tea time, the early evening news was being broadcast on the channel, when at around 5:10, the picture began to wobble, and a deep buzz started to cloud over the sound. Now before I play the message, I have to make one thing clear. To my knowledge, the original recording of this intrusion does not exist in its original form, so what you're about to see is a well-constructed mock-up of how the night's events looked and sounded. Some of the audio gets a bit difficult to hear, so the subtitles provided by the uploader will be available on screen. We shall now hear the message of Vrillen.
This is the voice of Allah, representative of the Ashtar Galactic Command, speaking to you. For many years you have seen us as lights in the skies. We speak to you now to service them as we have done to your brothers and sisters all over this, your planet Earth. We come to warn you of the destiny of your race and your world so that you may communicate to your fellow beings the course you must take to avoid the disaster which threatens your world and the beings on other worlds around you. This is in order that you may share in a great awakening as the planet passes into a new age of Aquarius. The new age can be a time of great peace and evolution for your race, but only your rulers are made aware of the evil forces that can overshadow their judgments. Be still now, and listen, for your chance may not come again. All your weapons of evil must be removed. The time for conflict is now past, and the race of which you are a part may proceed to the higher stages of its evolution, if you show yourselves worthy to do this. You have but a short time to learn to live together in peace and goodwill. Small groups all over the planet are learning this, and exist to pass on the light of the dawning new age to you all. You are free to accept the teachings.
Many go as wide as this. Then they run out.
Spiritual evolution. Hear now the voice of Vrillen, representative of the Ashtar Galactic.